In a significant development aimed at alleviating tensions between the United States and China, the two nations have reached a temporary agreement to slash tariffs imposed on each other. This decision comes amid growing concerns over the economic ramifications of an escalating trade war which has begun to impact consumers and businesses alike. The agreement announced on May 12, 2025 marks a pivotal moment in U.S.-China relations as both countries seek to navigate a path toward more stable trade dynamics. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer articulated the details of the agreement during a press conference in Geneva. The two nations will suspend their respective tariffs for 90 days, during which comprehensive negotiations will continue. According to the terms of the deal, the U.S. will reduce its tariff on Chinese imports from an extraordinary 145% to 30%. While China will lower its import duty on American goods from 125% to 10%. The decision to roll back these tariffs reflects the realization by both sides that the escalating trade conflict was adversely affecting global economic growth. Neither side wanted a decoupling, Bessent stated during the press conference, emphasizing that the shared interests of both nations necessitated a cooperative approach. The agreement comes at a time when American businesses have reported a significant slowdown in orders from China, with many companies holding off on new acquisitions in anticipation of a potential deal. This situation underscored the urgency for both governments to reach a compromise to avoid further economic distress. The backdrop to this agreement is one of increasing economic strain. The Trump administration had initially imposed high tariffs in response to what it characterized as China's unfair trade practices, including currency manipulation and subsidies that undercut American businesses. The recent increase in tariffs had led to retaliatory measures from China, which in turn exacerbated trade tensions and led to a halt in many transactions between the two nations. Market reactions to the announcement were positive, with global stock markets, including a notable surge in Hong Kong's benchmark index, responding favorably to the news. Investors expressed cautious optimism as they recognized the potential for a reduction in trade barriers to stimulate economic activity. However, analysts remain wary about the long-term implications of the agreement, particularly given the lack of comprehensive commitments from China regarding broader trade imbalances or currency issues. Mark Williams, chief Asia economist at Capital Economics, pointed out that the agreement appears to be a retreat from the Trump administration's earlier aggressive stance, lacking concrete commitments from China that address long-standing concerns. There is no guarantee that a 90-day truce will lead to a lasting agreement, Williams cautioned, highlighting the ongoing uncertainties that could derail progress. In addition to trade discussions, the talks also touched on the critical issue of fentanyl trafficking, a significant concern for U.S. policymakers. Bessent noted that Chinese officials demonstrated an understanding of the gravity of the fentanyl crisis in the United States, indicating a willingness to address this pressing issue as part of the broader negotiations. The unfolding dynamics of this trade agreement highlight the complex interplay between economic interests and geopolitical strategies. Both nations have much to gain from stabilizing their trade relationship, especially as they confront the realities of a post-pandemic global economy. However, the path forward remains fraught with challenges, as both sides will need to navigate their domestic political landscapes while aiming for a sustainable resolution to their trade differences. As the 90-day negotiation window unfolds, stakeholders from both nations will be closely monitoring developments, hoping that this agreement serves as a foundation for more enduring changes in U.S.-China trade relations. The coming weeks will be critical in determining whether this temporary truce can evolve into a lasting solution that benefits both economies and mitigates the risks of further confrontation. In a surprising shift from his previously unyielding stance on trade tariffs, President Donald Trump announced on May 12, 2025, that the tariffs on imports from China would be reduced from a staggering 145% to a more manageable 30%. This unexpected pivot comes after a series of trade negotiations that have characterized Trump's tumultuous tenure in office. The decision has sparked discussions not only about its implications for U.S.-China relations but also about the broader economic landscape. During an event in the White House's Roosevelt Room, Trump stated, "The biggest thing to me is the opening up. It would be fantastic for our businesses if we could go in and compete with China." This latest development marks a significant departure from his previous assertions that his tariff policies will never change. In response to the tariff reduction, China has also agreed to lower its retaliatory tariffs, potentially signaling a thaw in the icy trade relations that have defined recent years. The ramifications of this tariff reduction are likely to be felt across multiple sectors. Economists have noted that while the reduction may alleviate some pressures on American consumers and businesses, it might not be sufficient to address ongoing shortages that have plagued various industries, particularly in technology and manufacturing. A report from the Los Angeles Times highlights concerns that despite the diplomatic gesture, significant supply chain challenges remain and the full impact of these tariffs will take time to materialize. Political analysts are closely watching the potential effects of this tariff truce on Trump's poll numbers as he prepares for an upcoming trip to the Middle East. The trade negotiations with China are seen as a critical element of his administration's broader economic strategy, especially in light of the upcoming election cycle. As Trump embarks on this diplomatic mission, he hopes to leverage the perceived success of the negotiations to bolster his standing with voters, a strategy that may prove risky given the complexities of international relations. Moreover, the president's remarks about China opening itself up to American business reflect a broader ambition to enhance trade relations that could lead to job creation in both countries. However, the specifics of these negotiations remain somewhat nebulous, with Trump emphasizing that plans are still in the early stages of finalization. "It would be a lot of jobs for China," he remarked, indicating a belief that mutual cooperation could yield economic benefits. As the political landscape evolves, the implications of Trump's tariff reduction and the resulting trade dynamics with China will remain a focal point for both domestic and international observers. The unfolding events may not only reshape economic policies but also influence the electoral fortunes of Trump and his party as they navigate the complexities of global trade. Looking ahead, the world will be watching closely to see how these developments affect the political climate and the economy in the months leading up to the election. In a surprising turn of events, the United States and China have announced a temporary reduction in tariffs, a development that has elicited considerable optimism and relief across global markets. The agreement, reached after intense negotiations in Geneva, promises to cut U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods from an astonishing 145% to 30%. While China reciprocates by lowering its tariffs on American products from 125% to 10%. This pause in hostilities, although temporary, has sent ripples through financial markets, with global stocks rallying in response to the positive news. The agreement comes at a critical time as both nations are grappling with the economic ramifications of ongoing supply chain disruptions and rising consumer prices. Retail giants like Walmart have expressed concerns over potential shortages reminiscent of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly as the back-to-school shopping season approaches. The prospect of missing backpacks, sneakers, and t-shirts just as parents start back-to-school shopping was a key driver from the U.S. side, noted Josh Lipsky, a senior director at the Atlantic Council. Despite the apparent success of the negotiations, the backdrop remains fraught with uncertainty. Experts caution that while this agreement offers a temporary reprieve, it does not resolve the underlying tensions that have characterized U.S.-China relations. Melanie Hart, senior director of the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub, observed that this negotiation process grants China a significant political victory, allowing President Xi Jinping to project strength domestically while navigating the economic fallout from the trade war. In the past few months, U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports had escalated to unprecedented levels, severely impacting American businesses and consumers. The tariffs, initially intended to protect U.S. manufacturing jobs, have instead raised costs for companies reliant on Chinese goods. Economists have warned that the broader implications of these tariffs could lead to a slowdown in economic growth as higher prices trickle down to consumers. Daniel Mullaney, a former assistant U.S. Trade Representative, highlighted that regardless of the immediate outcome of the recent agreement, the unpredictability of the tariff regime will continue to influence U.S. trade dependence on China. The recent tariff reductions also signal a shift in the global trading landscape, with both countries seeking to solidify new bilateral arrangements amidst growing geopolitical tensions. Barbara C. Matthews, CEO of Bessent Strategy Incorporated, pointed out that the agreement encourages third countries to align with either the U.S. or China, potentially reshaping global trade dynamics. This development parallels historical trade negotiations where major powers sought to create new economic equilibria. The next significant challenge will be the negotiations for a more permanent trade agreement, which many experts believe will be more complex and may take longer than the initial 90 days allotted. The past experience with U.S.-China trade talks suggests that substantial progress could take years. With numerous contentious issues, such as technology transfers and intellectual property rights, still on the table. As the world watches this unfolding situation, the impacts of this temporary agreement will resonate far beyond the immediate economic indicators. The tariff reductions symbolize a crucial step toward de-escalation, yet they also underscore the fragility of the current trade environment, which remains susceptible to abrupt changes and policy shifts. Stakeholders from various sectors will be keenly observing how these negotiations unfold and what they mean for the future of international trade relations. With the clock ticking on the 90-day reprieve, the coming weeks will be pivotal in determining whether this moment marks a new chapter in U.S.-China relations or if it is merely a brief respite in a more contentious saga. In recent developments that underscore the growing tensions in the Asia-Pacific region. Taiwan has successfully test-fired a new U.S.-supplied rocket system, the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System HIMARS, as part of its ongoing efforts to bolster its defenses against China. This exercise, conducted on May 12, 2025, marks a significant milestone for Taiwan, which has been increasingly under pressure from China's expanding military capabilities and assertive claims over the self-governing island. The HIMARS, which Taiwan received last year, is renowned for its effectiveness and precision, having been deployed in various conflict zones, including Ukraine's ongoing war with Russia. During the recent drills, the Taiwanese military launched a total of 33 HIMARS rockets, demonstrating its capability to engage targets up to 300 kilometers away, far exceeding the range of Taiwan's existing artillery systems. Su Tsuyun, director at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, emphasized that HIMARS could effectively suppress China's launch capabilities, particularly in the context of a potential amphibious invasion. The HIMARS can suppress China's launch capabilities at the source, he stated, reflecting the system's strategic importance. The exercise comes in the wake of heightened military activities by China, which has routinely conducted drills near Taiwan. Just a day prior to Taiwan's missile test, the island's defense ministry reported the detection of 36 Chinese military aircraft, indicating the growing military pressure from Beijing. Such developments have prompted Taiwan to strengthen its defense posture, with the HIMARS functioning as a critical component in enhancing its overall military readiness. Meanwhile, China has been vocal about its national security strategy, releasing a new white paper that outlines a holistic approach to security, a framework that encompasses internal stability, economic growth, and military readiness. This document, issued by the State Council Information Office, articulates China's vision of national security as integral to its development goals. The paper emphasizes a coordinated strategy that seeks to harmonize security imperatives with economic and political stability. President Xi Jinping's assertion that development is the foundation of security highlights a key tenet of this approach, suggesting that without economic stability, national security remains vulnerable. The white paper outlines China's commitment to a comprehensive security framework which includes both internal and external dimensions, thereby reflecting a broader understanding of the interconnected nature of global security challenges. As Taiwan continues to enhance its military capabilities in the face of China's aggressive posturing, the implications for regional security dynamics are profound. Analysts suggest that the provision of advanced weaponry like HIMARS represents a shift in U.S. policy toward Taiwan, reinforcing the island's defense capabilities amid escalating tensions. This evolving landscape not only impacts Taiwan but also has broader ramifications for U.S.-China relations and the overall stability of the Asia-Pacific region. In conclusion, as Taiwan strengthens its defenses with advanced military systems and China articulates a comprehensive national security strategy, the stage is set for a potential escalation of tensions. The international community will be closely watching how these developments unfold, particularly in terms of diplomatic engagements and military posturing in the region. Future interactions between Taiwan and China, coupled with U.S. support, will likely play a crucial role in shaping the geopolitical landscape of East Asia in the coming years. In a significant turn of events regarding U.S.-China relations, President Donald Trump announced that he may speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping this week, following a groundbreaking tariff agreement reached during recent negotiations in Switzerland. This potential dialogue comes on the heels of what Trump characterized as a total reset in bilateral relations, which he claims will foster unification and peace between the two nations. During a press conference on Monday, Trump described the talks held over the weekend in Geneva as very friendly, suggesting that they marked a new chapter in U.S.-China interactions. "The relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week," he stated, highlighting the cooperative spirit that emerged from the discussions. The two sides reportedly agreed to a 90-day reduction in tariffs, significantly lowering the current rates that have been a point of contention. Trump had previously imposed tariffs as high as 145% on Chinese goods, while China maintained a rate of 125%. Under the new agreement, U.S. tariffs will be reduced to 55%, while China will lower its import levies to 10%. This tariff truce is not merely a tactical win for Trump, it reflects a broader strategic maneuver that could reshape international trade dynamics. Following years of escalating trade tensions, the recent negotiations signal a potential thaw in relationships not just between the U.S. and China but also among other global players who have been affected by the ongoing trade war. However, the long-term implications of this agreement remain to be seen, particularly as many analysts caution that the underlying issues, such as intellectual property disputes and market access, are far from resolved. As Trump prepares for this anticipated conversation with Xi, the backdrop of international relations is ever-shifting. European nations, for instance, have been recalibrating their policies in light of the changing dynamics between the U.S. and China. The EU has been navigating its own complex relationship with China, balancing economic interests with concerns over human rights and geopolitical stability. The EU's approach has been characterized by a desire to maintain strong ties with the US while also engaging proactively with China, seeking to address trade imbalances and overcapacity issues. This evolving landscape is underscored by the fact that European leaders are planning a summit with Xi Jinping later this July as they seek to solidify their own economic ties with China despite the tensions stemming from US policies. Observers note that the EU must tread carefully, especially given the potential for a global decoupling that could have significant economic repercussions. At the same time, the implications of Trump's policies extend beyond tariffs and trade. His administration's approach has raised eyebrows within Europe, leading to concerns about the future of transatlantic relations. The shifting geopolitical context has prompted European leaders to reassess their strategies regarding China, as many are beginning to see the need to engage in dialogue rather than adopt a purely adversarial stance. In conclusion, as President Trump prepares to engage with Xi Jinping, the larger narrative of U.S.-China relations and its impact on the global stage continues to unfold. The recent tariff agreement may pave the way for more comprehensive discussions, but significant challenges remain. As both nations navigate this complex landscape, the international community will be watching closely. anticipating how these developments will influence economic policies and diplomatic relationships in the months and years to come. The real test will be whether both sides can translate this diplomatic momentum into lasting agreements that address the fundamental issues at the heart of their rivalry.